Hello there, my fellow oppressed gamers. It is I, the Supreme Intelligence, known as the Ultimate Joker, bringing you the second episode of UltaMatE RANTS. And today's topic is going to be Injustice 2 Source Crystals. Now, I was playing this average-ass game known as Avengers, and noticed that they had some fishy microtransactions. Now, sure, these were bashed by the people, as they should be, but then it reminded me of another superhero video game that did it just as bad, if not worse, except they got away with it for some reason. Injustice 2.
Now, just to clarify so we don't get tomatoes thrown at me in my comments section, I'm just judging the microtransactions, monetization, and earn rate of the game. Their earn rate and so on may be as bad as Avengers, but despite the flaws of Injustice 2, it's way better at being a fighting game than Avengers is at being, whatever it was trying to be. But as I was about to get into, now when you first start playing Injustice 2, the grind for Source Crystals doesn't seem all that bad until you notice that you just about only get Source Crystals for leveling up, which is something that gets harder and harder as you go, ridiculously hard depending on the number you're at, like 70, 80, etc. You get some from the story mode and the learning tutorial mode, but those are like one-time things. In my entire time on Injustice 2, which is like around 55 days, I've only gotten enough to buy like 4 or 5 things in the game, when there's plenty of more things to collect, like the character skins such as Mr. Freeze, Bizarro, Vixen, etc. Every 2 weeks you can earn a mere 200 Source Crystals, but the grind is atrocious. Let me show you an example. Keep in mind that each match takes around 2 minutes or more. This is what I'll be basing my math around, but this is what you gotta do to get 200 crystals. You have to do this 10 match event 30 times, this hard boss fight 20 times, do this other boss once. Now keep in mind the bosses are hard and will probably take you multiple tries. I won't include that in the math just to be generous. Do this 5 match event 30 times, do this 8 match event 20 times, do this 5 match event 20 times. This estimated time for completing all this, assuming you don't fail the boss fights, is 1,462 minutes. Now you can divide this grind among other players in your guild, which is like up to 50, but this would require every person in the guild to at least put in a half hour, which doesn't sound too bad on paper. But this is a fighting game where most people want to spend time online fighting other players or friends, and hell, you may not even get into a guild of 50 people, therefore causing you to have to sink in more minutes. But even if that gets done every time, these guild events are weekly, and they seem to only give 200 crystals every 2 weeks. Therefore, it would take 50 weeks to get a special shader, and 60 weeks to get a premier skin. That's insane. That's about a year or more. Meanwhile in Avengers, I can buy just about the same amount of skins I already have in Injustice 2, if not more, in just 5 days of playtime, as opposed to 55 days. With the only throwback being that you may have to wait for the skin you want to appear in the store. Although some skins sorta don't come into the store, and the store doesn't swap items that frequently, so it's probably just as bad as Injustice 2, if not worse in certain aspects. A little off topic, but I find it quite odd that the legendary Crash Team Racing remaster went from an 8.3 user score to 6.8. just because of being able to buy currency for skins despite the earn rate being pretty generous, especially in comparison to Injustice 2. I was able to earn like 20 times the cosmetic content in Crash Team Racing as opposed to Injustice 2, where I spent just as much time playing. I'm getting off topic, but whatever. I may get into the injustice done against Crash Team Racing's user score in another video, but the point is, Injustice 2 got away with one of the slowest time to earn things in a fully priced video game that also had a $100 edition, may I add, I have ever seen, while others like Crash Team Racing and Avengers got bashed into the ground for it, although Avengers is still fairly worthy of that bashing, as I've said. I guess the buying price of Injustice 2's microtransactions aren't as bad as Avengers. It's like $10 for just an emote or skin, and paying $130 only gets you like 10 skins. as opposed to Injustice 2 where a skin only costs you $6. Injustice 2 was still a fully priced game that had a $100 edition, I'll say once again, but in terms of earn rate without payment, Injustice 2 is much worse, and Crash Team Racing isn't even in the same ballpark as those two games despite getting a lowered user score due to it.
I will admit, if you spent carefully in Injustice 2, you may be able to deck out around 4-ish characters, but for those of you who like to be a completionist like I am, or someone who explores the roster a lot, you're screwed. The game pretty much stonewalls or ultra slow walls your progression at higher levels like 70-ish or higher, which sucks ass. If I spent 55 days playing your fully priced video game that also went up to around $100, as I say again for the third time, I should probably have all or close to all the content offered if the earn rate was somewhat reasonable. Take the EA Battlefronts for example. As rough as the second one could have ended up being, I got every skin in both of them. Or Crash Team Racing, where I have at least 82% or more of what they had to offer, as opposed to Injustice 2 where I probably only have like 40% at maximum of what they have to offer in terms of items that require source crystals. I suppose other games might be worse like sports games or mobile games, but we're setting the bar quite low by making those comparisons. A company taking a smaller shit in the urinal than other companies doesn't make shitting in the urinal okay. I'm obviously not counting free-to-play games or games that didn't fully price themselves like Dead by Daylight. Anyway, this video is turning out longer than I wanted it to be, so last point. The cherry on the diarrhea shit monetization Sunday of Injustice 2 is having to use 2,000 source crystals to make a gear with certain stats look different. If you don't spend the crystals doing that, you may get a costume that doesn't look the way you'd want it to when going for the most efficient and powerful loadout. For example, I'd like my Starfire costume to look like this for the gear stat game modes, going for that New 52 look if you get what I'm saying.
Like, oh my gosh, it's so sexually objectifying.
But it looks like this instead. I had to fork over source crystals to change it, which I've already proven to be a bitch to obtain. Or you can buy the solution to the problem they intentionally created by paying 10-ish bucks so that the game allows you to change the appearance of gear for free, I guess. The ability to pay for this privilege, of course, came out at the time of the last DLC as something you'd have to pay for regardless of what edition you had. Even that $100 edition. Although not as money pinching as Injustice 2, other games have done shit like this with stats tying into cosmetics, and I honestly sort of hate the whole concept of that, but that's a topic I may get into in another video. But quickly, back on topic with Injustice 2, they tried to fool people into wasting 20,000 source crystals on maxing out a character, even though that could be done in a single day. And they also tried to fool people into buying Brainiac with real money, who you could just unlock by beating the story mode, which could also be done in just a day. Those things are more minor, but it's the greedy, deceptive intent in trying to fool those that don't know better that pisses me off. But that's all of it for real this time. But yeah, me exposing this may not mean anything due to the fact that they got away with this unscathed with little backlash, probably due to reviewers putting out the reviews before noticing that when getting to higher levels like 60 or higher, the crystal earn rate becomes unbearably slow. This will probably get worse in Injustice 3 with another $100 edition, with an earn rate that will probably remain just as slow, if not slower. Similar to other things in life, the problem gets worse or stays the same when people let others get away with said problem unaddressed.
But whatever, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment whether you agree or disagree with my points. Check out my other videos such as my first episode of UltaMatE RANTS or my other series called UltaMatE Defenses, and funny Injustice YTP-esque videos of mine. Check out my Instagram for similar content and to be notified on other videos. But yeah, I'll see you on the next video.